Derren, could you begin by telling me what cold reading is and how it's used?
Cold reading, I suppose, is the way that a complete stranger can seemingly tell you everything about yourself without being psychic and without knowing anything about you. In essence, the cold reader or psychic is supplying a lot of words, and you as the sitter, the other person, is supplying the meaning to those words. And it relies on a lot of techniques. It's not really a question of forensic body reading and the sort of things that people might... It's not really normally even that clever. There are linguistic tricks which, unless you're aware of them, are very easy to fall for. And those tricks can give the impression that the person knows everything about your character, or might refer to facts and things from your life or from your past that they seemingly couldn't know about.
So if a psychic, a so-called psychic, a trickster, was trying to pretend to guess, I don't know, the name of the sitter's grandfather or something like that, what would be the kind of thing they might do?
Well, very often, I mean, even guessing the name of a grandfather, if you back up, what tends to happen is that the psychic will, if it's with a group of people, throw out a name and say, I'm getting the name John or Albert or some name that's sort of suitable for the age group they're working with. And now that name could refer to a person in the audience who's living, or it could refer to someone that's died, or it could be a friend of the person. It really could be anything. So it's up to somebody to pick up on it and turn it into what they want it to be. And of course, if they say, yes, that was my husband, then the reader can go, yes, that's right, he's here, he's saying he still loves you, or whatever that is. And they turn it back into, make it sound as if they were saying it was your husband, when in fact it could have been anybody. It could have been the name of the person that was sat there. The kind of methods that involved... the Barnum statement's very sort of famous and well known about, and there's a great experiment.
Remind us what the Barnum...
Yeah, there's a terrific experiment that was done on this with students. I've filmed this myself. We did it with 3 different groups of people across the world, where you have everybody in the group is given a reading, a personality reading, and normally beforehand there's some nonsense about asking for their birth date or getting some objects off them. So there's some sort of process apparently involved, and they're given a reading, and it's a long reading. It's a very detailed personality reading, and they all get one individually. They're all asked to read it, and invariably they will all say afterwards that it's very, very accurate, that it was not at all vague or ambiguous of what people might expect, and they'll give it 85, 90, 95% accuracy. And I've seen this happen, and people are amazed by it. And then you get them to swap with each other. And so perhaps you can identify someone else by their reading, then they realise they've all been given exactly the same thing. Which was written months ago before I even met them, And the statements that fill those sorts of readings are generally Barnum statements. And Barnum statements are things which essentially apply to anybody. This is only part of the cold reading skill, but it's a major part of it.
It comes from P.T. Barnum, the circus proprietor,
That's
who
right.
said, we have something for everybody.
Something for everyone, that's right.
Okay.
And famously, a sucker was born every minute. So these are statements along the lines of, you're somebody who... you tend to keep people a little bit at bay, but when...
You're a caring person.
Yeah, you're a caring, you keep people a little bit at bay there. You tend to keep people at arm's length, but when you allow people into that inner sanctum of, when they become your close friends, if they betray you, then that really hurts, And you're not saying anything other than you're closer to people that you're close to. Then it means nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yes. And horoscopes are the same. I mean, they use the same principle.
Because those things have to apply to anybody, because there's no interaction going on. A horoscope or something given, when everyone's getting the same thing. There's no feedback, so you're simply relying on things that apply to anybody. What you can do when you're interacting with somebody is you can fork off from one way or another. Be careful I say that. You can go one way or the other depending on the response you get. So if I said to you that the spirits are telling me you've got quite a temper, you could answer yes or no to that. You might agree or disagree. Now, if you agree with it, it feels like a hit, and I can say yes, that's right. I can sense that you've got a real temper. ... If you say no, I can say. Well, not on the outside. I mean, what you've done is you've learned how to sort of keep that very contained. But inside, you'll be aware that there are some things that really kind of knock you up and make you very angry. But what's great about you is that you've learned to control that on the outside. And it still feels like a hit. Linguistically, what they tend to do is they say, they put the word not into the question. So they'll say things like, one recent reading I was listening to was, she said, now you haven't you haven't been drinking a lot of water recently, have you? And by phrasing it in the negative, it allows a yes or no to be a hit. And the answer was no, and she said, well, you should do. The Spirit's telling me you need to be drinking more than you are. You haven't been drinking much. And it sounded like a hit. Equally, if the person said yes, it would have seemed like, yes, they're telling me, either way. Then a common ruse also is to make statements that allow you to have both sides of the coin in one go. So, for example, if I said to you, you've got an extrovert side and an introvert side, that's not remotely convincing at all. That seems to be a given. But if you say to somebody, when you're at a party, you're very good. You're very good at being able to hold court. You can entertain people. You're very good at being really the life and soul of a party. But what's interesting about you is that when you walk away from that, you'll often find yourself at home running back through conversations in your head and wondering, oh, what did that person mean? Why did I say that? That was stupid. And when you're even at those parties, even though you like to think that you're somebody who can be in charge and very charismatic, you'll often find yourself just stood there thinking, God, why am I here? It's like everyone is a million miles away, and you're aware that that is a facade that you put on. Now, whether or not that applies to you, the fact is all I'm doing is saying that you've got an introvert and an extrovert side, which cancels itself out. It means nothing. And yet most people will find a way of sort of making that easily fit themselves.
Now, when you analyse these things like the Barnum effect and cold reading, you're doing it in a sort of rational way. I take it that the psychics and palm readers and astrologers and people who do it know perfectly well what they're doing, and therefore they are fakes. But are all of them fakes, or do some of them somehow manage to fool themselves as well?
I think the difference is how good they are at it, which is unfair in a way, because it becomes... or maybe
the good ones are the fakes.
I think the difference is you can see when cold reading is at work, when you know the tricks, when you know the same old things coming out about. You've got an old box of photographs at home with and you've got the sort of the tricks that they come out with, and the pushing for statements, making somebody make a statement hit, and if they don't, moving on to the next person. One I was listening to recently, you've been doing a lot of spirit telling me you've been doing a lot of sewing. And that woman was like, no. She said, well, is it somebody in the spirit plane has been doing a lot of sewing? No, she couldn't make a hit. And so went to the next person, is it for you? You've been doing a lot of sewing? The woman was, no. She said, well, there's a coat, you've got a coat at home with, there's a button that's loose or a hem that's loose. No. I mean, it wasn't working. And in the end she said, well, have a look for that, my dear. They're telling me there's a and it went from somebody with, to nothing. So when you see that, that's clearly that person they know exactly what they're doing. They're desperately trying to get a hit. However, I think the people that are, I've been to psychic training colleges and seen people that are very sincerely trying to learn. They've been told they believe that they're a bit psychic because, we all have a certain amount of intuition, and we all, if we misunderstand things like kind of coincidence and a phone ringing because we've been thinking of somebody earlier on that day and the phone rings and it's them, we might mistake that for being psychic if we don't really understand how those things can easily happen quite a lot of the time. So I think there are plenty of people who learn it genuinely and really think that, whether it's palm reading or tarot cards or whatever, that there really is a system.
But and they go to a training course.
These things do exist, but equally you can buy books on it nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I'm just trying to get into the mind of one of the instructors on the training course. I mean, the instructors on the training course are teaching cold reading while dressing it up as though it was genuine. So they really are charlatans then.
I think so. I think so. It's difficult because cold reading is something that you can be taught to do without it seeming like tricks.
Okay.
I've been in a situation where trainee psychics are sat around saying things to each other like, I'm sensing there's... some of the great things I heard was, I'm sensing you're on a bus and the bus is going the wrong way, but it might not be a bus, it might be a relationship. And when you're hearing things like that, you think, well, okay, this isn't cold reading, this is just people sort of hypothesizing intuition and just learning to I'll just speak openly, and I know this other person's going to make it fit because we're all partisan and we're all learning together. And that just seems sort of naive and a bit of a shame.
When they're learning it all together, they're still dressing it up in their own minds as the spirit world talking to them rather than...
Absolutely. But all it is it's just being intuitive and being open and just say what you feel. That's all it is. It's this whole thing of intuiting your way to enlightenment and knowledge, which is, potential.